Hello, everybody. It's 2:30. If you're here, it's the water battle, the greatest water battle of all time. One of many we've had. I guess Nick's kind of battle himself, maybe, but or Scott's going to battle you. Welcome to Politifest 2025 Solutions Showdown. It's great to be here with you today for our final panels. In case you're not familiar with us, Voice of San Diego is a nonprofit investigative news org committed to holding public officials accountable and giving you, the public, the information you need to be advocates for good government. As a nonprofit, we depend on members, donors, and sponsors like you to make our work possible. Thank you for your support. I'd like to take a minute to recognize sponsors who help make Politifest possible. Special thanks to College of Arts and Sciences at the University of San Diego for being our partner for the 8th year. Thanks also to Sequan Band of Kumeyaay Nation, Mark Nelson, and Nelson Stakeholder Consulting, the San Diego Foundation, Hitsky Development, Intesa, the Prebz Foundation, First Five San Diego, and AARP. We'd also like to recognize KPBS and iNewsSource, our partners in Public Matters. We're partnering to share content, conversation, and events like Politifest to ensure all San Diegans understand their opportunity to participate in the democratic process, and that it means more than voting in an election. So, if you're unable to attend any of the sessions, we will post the recordings on our Politifest page on the website next week, so don't worry. We welcome your questions. Use the app. If you're not familiar, scan that QR code, and you'll be able to vote for your favorite winner of the Solution Showdown, and also submit questions for us to ask live during the panel here. And you can tweet along with the session and share your experience by using hashtag Politifest 2025 on social media, and tag us on Instagram and Facebook. Now let me introduce to you our moderator, the one, the only, the greatest showman on earth, and apparently a professional referee, Scott Lewis.
Hello. The best panel of the day. Yeah. Just because I'm moderating it, right? Now, I love water. As you all know, if you follow Voice San Diego, we have been following the story of water since we began. But also, over the last several years, it has been very interesting and continues to be. Thank you all for following it and being interested in it. San Diego is a unique place. We're at the very corner of the country. We bring water in from hundreds of miles away. We take salt out of it from the ocean. We do a lot of things to make it possible for us to turn on the water every day and have it work. It is a really special and infrastructure achievement, I think. If you ever have the opportunity to go on the Water Authority or the Metropolitan Water District's, what do they call them? The tours, the sort of camps they do to explain. I had that 20 years ago. They took me and I watched the water just flow through some of the dams that control the supply. It's incredible. And it costs a tremendous amount of money. Over the last 20 years, San Diego has made massive investments in bringing and securing more water or more access to water. Again, the desalination plants and now pure water in the city of San Diego, numerous infrastructure projects in between. And those costs are catching up to us. And so we wanted to have a discussion about how we can contain or reduce them over time as that's becoming more and more a part of the conversation in local public affairs. Have we gone too far? And there's been some rather significant suggestions that maybe we try to unwind, because we are at the end of that pipe, but we have now access to maybe more water, or at least in the future more water than we need, which is a fascinating problem for San Diego to have. So I'm very excited to have our panelists. We are just thrilled to welcome Nick Serrano. He's the chair of the San Diego County Water Authority. Yeah, I didn't mean to promote you, or I guess would that be a promotion? Yeah, sort of. And Nick's also the chief of staff at the deputy chief for Mayor Todd Gloria, which I think gives him a unique view not only on what the city's dealing with, but what the county and the region are dealing with. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you.
And Daniel Enemark, I'm very excited to have you. Maybe you could take a second and describe the Public Policy Institute.
Yeah, sure. So I
Use the mic. Yeah.
Okay, sure. I work for the Policy and Innovation Center here in San Diego. We're affiliated with the San Diego Foundation, but we're on our own 501c3. We are a think tank and a social impact incubator. So we help governments and nonprofits and big anchor institutions around the county answer important questions to solve complex problems. And then we also design, run, and evaluate programs that are pilots. For example, we have a big $75 million project with the county to help people who cannot afford to get into the behavioral health field, to get the training that they need to become behavioral health professionals, since we have a shortage in that area, right? So we do a wide range of things, but I'm the chief economist there, and I oversee a team of 9 research scientists, and we do research on a variety of subjects.
Fascinating. Well, we are excited to have this. So the format, as you've noticed, is to let them both present their presentations, their slides, their solutions, and then we'll have a discussion about it. We'll have Q&A. I'll follow the questions. I love this format on the questions. You can upvote and downvote the ones that you like and don't like. I'll monitor those and try to get as many of those in as we can. We'll take a pretty relaxed tone and conversational tone here. I'm excited to get your voices involved. But first, giving us the first presentation is Nick Serrano.
All right, let's see if we can get these mechanics. Okay, so yes, well, that's a little bit further. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Nick Serrano. As Scott mentioned, I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Mayor of the City of San Diego. I also serve as the Chair of the San Diego County Water Authority, representing the City of San Diego. And I've been on the board since May of 2021, and my main focus has and continues to be on ratepayer affordability and the reliability for all of our homes and businesses. To begin, as you can see on the screen, I know that I've been asked to talk about solutions, but because this is a Voice of San Diego event and Scott Lewis is moderating, I'm going to do the opposite. So I want to start with a couple things that are not solutions to water affordability or reliability. First, it's this. It's not turning back the clock to the 1950s when San Diego just had one source of water. Certainly not sustainable for 3.3 million people and a $262 billion economy that we support today. Second, it's not gambling with the reliability of our infrastructure or our water supplies. Without adequate water supplies, we wouldn't be the region or the city that we are. San Diego would basically be, well, like Barstow, and I don't think any of us are voting for that. But last and certainly not least, this is not a solution. Now, candidly, what this is, and as Voice has previously reported, which is why I thought it was appropriate to bring up, it's this idea of breaking up or dissolving the San Diego County Water Authority. Not only would it cost years and millions in legal fees, it would also abandon the investments that we've made as taxpayers, but also would shrink San Diego County's voting power at the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, just up north. And I don't think that that is a solution. I think something like this is a distraction. And so now with that said, let me just rewind for a bit and actually provide some context for this discussion about how we got here. So in the early 1990s, San Diego County had virtually no water of its own. We relied majorly on the imported water from the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, whom I just mentioned, and after 5 years of drought, Met cut water deliveries to San Diego, sparking this reaction here, creating economic havoc and prompting a broad and regional pledge in San Diego that never again would we rely so heavily on a single source of water supplies. San Diego was determined to determine its own destiny. So what followed was $3 billion in investments over 2 decades in water transfers, new reservoirs, investments in desalinated water, as Scott mentioned, pipeline relining, and conservation. And it worked, because right now we have one of the most secure water supply portfolios in the West. We also have avoided any impacts from the last 2 droughts and sit here today well prepared for the next one. Now, that security has come at a cost, but it's also why today water is there for you when you need it. Now, going back to drought, you may have seen this in the news this week that San Diego had the driest rainy season in a decade. And this is a recent depiction of drought conditions. And as you can see, Southern California continues to sit within severe drought. Now, while this past year has been extremely dry for Southern California, it's also true that the past 25 years have been extremely dry along the Colorado River. And as a result, we believe that cutbacks in water along the Colorado River for everyone who uses it is coming. That's Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. All of them who have concerns about the future of the Colorado. Now, simultaneously, and as a compounding factor to understand some context here, particularly for Southern California, it's important to note that just 3 years ago, there were 6 million people in Los Angeles who were put on emergency water rations because there wasn't enough to go around. And you might not remember that here because we didn't have any issues. We had the supplies to serve our homes and businesses. So yes, we have the security and reliability based on the investments that we've made to ensure water is there for us when we need it, but we do need actionable solutions that I believe that we can make to make the Venn diagram between reliability, security, and affordability true. And so I'm going to start with 2 that are basic but true and necessary in terms of avoiding spikes in water rates. So first, we have to maintain what we have, and we have to prevent emergencies, ensure that the water keeps flowing. Here's why. The Water Authority has 308 miles of large diameter pipes, most of which are big enough for me to walk through, as you can see depicted on the screen. And when those pipelines were built 50 to 80 years ago, they were in mostly remote areas. Well, today, they are next to homes, schools, businesses, freeways, power lines, gas lines. If they bust because we haven't maintained them, we aren't talking about a neighborhood out of water for a few hours. We are talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of people without water for days or longer, not to mention any impacts to life or property. That's a huge liability and a huge price tag, not just for the damage, but because the repairs are 25 times as much for emergency repairs than standard repairs. Again, it might seem basic, but avoiding costly deferred maintenance is the foundation of everything else that we do. And so my second basic solution is this. We have to pay what we owe. If we start playing politics with paying what we owe, the $3 billion in investments that we made, or skipping out on our obligations, we risk things like credit rating downgrades, which will cost more and certainly necessitate increased water rates. That also means that when discussing things like operational cuts or reduced capital expenditures, that has to be strategic and surgical in order to, what we just talked about, maintain our system and prevent emergencies. Now, I want to be clear on that last bullet that when it comes to capital expenditures, that is not any new water supply projects. In my estimation, we're done. This is about maintaining and keeping our infrastructure up to date. So those are the foundational and albeit basic solutions, and they certainly are not enough when it comes to affordability. I know that, particularly when you consider something a little bit more macro, that we are living in extraordinary, unprecedented times for so many reasons, whether you consider inflation, the high cost of living across all sectors, the climate change whiplash that we're experiencing, Donald Trump, and so for me, I'm very clear that the status quo will not deliver the results that we need in this moment. And so therefore, I want to preface my next phase of solutions with sort of my main thesis. We have to stop doing things the way that they've always been done, just because that's how it's been. We have to stop thinking about things in the same way that we've thought about them or acting in the same way that we've acted, and that is especially true in the world of water. The easiest thing, in my mind, for government to do is the same thing that has always been done. And so for me, when someone says to me, well, this is how it's always been, that's a red flag. So therein lies my next solution, which is We have to stop endlessly fighting yesterday's battles, holding on to the gripes from the past or personality politics, because that does nothing for the ratepayer, and it generally just maintains a status quo. And so my example of this is the 15-year legal battle the San Diego County Water Authority was engaged with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. That was 15 years of fighting in courtrooms, hearings, letters back and forth, millions expended in legal fees, and no end in sight until this past June. When I came onto the board and in board leadership, we were sort of indoctrinated that we had to see Metropolitan as this enemy because we were fighting them in court. There was zero acknowledgement about how much we were connected or we actually needed each other to get stuff done. No acknowledgement that the challenges that we're facing currently, ratepayer affordability, climate change, the dire situation along the Colorado River, we need their partnership to actually address. But yet we were continuously and endlessly fighting them in court. And so choosing to settle that decades-long of litigation in my mind was about this. It's about this new notion of what I believe regionalism should be when it comes to water, which is not thinking about San Diego County in isolation, but really all of us across Southern California. Again, acknowledging that we are facing the exact same challenges. Now, you heard me just mention a moment ago the dire situation that Metropolitan was in just a few years ago with water scarcity. They didn't have enough water to go around, so they had to put down restrictions. So they have a need, and the San Diego County Water Authority has a product. And so I have a solution for that. We must sell our excess water supplies to those who need it. This is simple supply and demand. We have supply, Metropolitan and others have a demand, and we have enough water right now, and we are actively marketing it to other agencies, including Metropolitan and the agencies in their service area. We are also in talks with other states who could benefit from more reliable supplies like the desal plant. And we're also working with the federal government on potential arrangements to benefit the Colorado River. Again, I want to reiterate that Met literally has the pipes and the legal rights to be able to make those connections and deals happen, so you can see where that partnership was so necessary in order to do something like this, for us to bring in the resources from our investments and then apply them to bring down and stabilize water rates. It's pioneering work, but it's also massive opportunity for us here in San Diego to stabilize water rates. And as part of the significant progress that we've made on this front, we have already done frameworks on paper for how this can get done. So this is just a framework of how this could work, particularly when it comes to the Colorado River, right? And I say that just to demonstrate the progress that has already been made in order to get this done. And as I was sharing a second ago, I think we're really on the cusp of making this opportunity possible. So now here's the thing. The dire situation at Metropolitan that they went through 3 years ago was really that never again moment for them, just like we had decades ago as well. And they are actively considering billions in new water supply projects for their jurisdiction in order to procure the water that they need locally. Most notable of which is Pure Water Southern California, which is price tagged today at $11 billion. That means likely massive water rate increases for Met customers to pay for it. But what Met hasn't done is taken stock of all of the local supply projects that are built within its service area, including right here in San Diego County. Again, things like the desal plant and even Pure Water San Diego. And so I think that's a mistake. And so my next solution is this. Metropolitan should pause or rescale their proposed projects until they've evaluated how local supply projects can move water to address their needs. And this is where my new notion of regionalism, again, not just about San Diego County or LA County or Orange County, but all of us in Southern California comes in. So I think this would certainly mean that Met would pay us pay us for water that we can move into their system, and then we would apply that back to the ratepayer. And so I want them to really consider, before they go through these massive infrastructure investments in their service area, they should look to San Diego first to see how we can be helpful. And I think we're in a place finally where we can do that. And so my last solution is this, and I think it is absolutely necessary, and it's an inequity that currently exists that we must fix. We need a statewide low-income rate assistance program for water bills. We don't have one. Yet there are some, scattered amongst local jurisdictions, but there is none that has been adopted by the state. And here's the part. The state has one for energy bills, but not water. The program for energy is called CARE, and it provides 30 to 35% discount on electric bills for qualifying households. Now, virtually every water agency in the state wants a program like this, and we need to make it a reality. We need a resource for residents and families to seek help on their water bills. So that brings me to the end of my proposed solutions, but let me say this in closing. Water isn't elective. It's life. And in San Diego, we've proven that we can secure it, rely upon it when others couldn't, even in the driest of years. The question is now, how do we make it affordable? Can we make it affordable? And I believe that answer is yes. But doing so in these extraordinary and unprecedented times demands that we see this challenge, but also find the opportunity that exists therein. And the opportunity based off what we've done together is massive at this point. It also demands that we stop doing things the way that they always been done, and that we choose partnership over parochialism, collaboration over conflict, shared future over fractured history. That is my North Star in this moment. And that's why, in the face of all of these extraordinary and unprecedented challenges, I do believe that the glass is not half empty, it's half full.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And I will not interject. We'll introduce Daniel.
The first thing I'll start with is just a bit of free advice, which is never follow this guy. Never go after Nick Serrano. This is a disaster, everybody. I barely have any slides. This guy is a talented and persuasive speaker. And then the other thing I'll say is, unfortunately, we've not assembled a pair of speakers who are at utter opposition. And so what you'll hear from me is not kind of shocking after what you've already heard. If we had brought in some of the more firebrand city council members who want to dissolve the county water authority, we might have had a more interesting pitched battle. But I don't think anything that Nick has said is far off base. I have a 1.5-year-old baby boy, and I've been reading to myself, not to him, the original Grimm fairy tales. And the reason I don't read them to him is because they're horrifying. Has anybody ever read the original Grimm fairy tales? It's like 300 of them. There's a million. Okay, so I was reading one the other night, and I realized this is the story of San Diego Water. Okay, here's the story. There once was a little girl who was obedient and thoughtful, and she lived with her poor mother. And one day, her mother ran out of food, but she didn't have enough money to go and buy more. And so her little daughter went into the woods, and she came upon a woodland fairy. And she told the story of her plight to the woodland fairy and begged that this fairy find a way to help her mother so that she could eat. The fairy gave her a magic pot. And the pot had the ability to create porridge, sweet porridge, delicious sweet porridge. And all you had to do was say, cook, pot, cook, to make the pot start cooking, and stop, pot, stop, to make it stop. So the family lived in full supply and with happiness, and their lives changed dramatically, and they had all the sweet porridge they could eat. And then one day, the daughter said, cook, pot, cook, and then she went off to visit some friends in another town. And her mother had forgotten the password to make the pot stop. And so the pot kept making more and more and more porridge until it filled the house, and then it buried the house, and then buried the next house, and the whole town was filled with porridge until she came back, and there was only one house left. And when she got back, she said, "Stop, pot, stop," and the pot stopped. And anybody else who wanted to return to the town had to eat their way through the porridge to get to their home. I have no idea what the point of that story is, except maybe like write down your passwords or something. I don't know what children are supposed to learn from it, but it's the story of San Diego's water, which is that we had this very dedicated public servant who was following the behests of businesses, especially, and residents who were saying, we can't go through these cutbacks that we went through in the early 90s. And they said, cook, pot, cook. They built the pot that would provide us with water, the desal plant, the QSA, all of these extraordinary efforts to secure water, which were extraordinary and also extraordinarily expensive. And if Nick had been in charge, or if I had been in charge, somebody who is a little bit more cutthroat and political, we would have said, I dare you to turn off the California's third biggest economy. I dare you. 80% of our water is used by agriculture, which, by the way, contributes less than 2% of our GDP in California. 80% of the water, 2% of the profits. So I would have said, I dare you. We're too big to fail. It worked for the banks, it worked for San Diego, but we had some very thoughtful, dedicated do-gooders in charge and some engineers who had some engineering solutions. And now we have this challenge. Now, what I don't maybe fully agree on is that this was just kind of an unforeseeable thing and we did all that we had to do and no more. I would say, I'll skip to this. This is a chart of projections that were put together, but this is long before Nick showed up at the Water Authority, so don't blame him. These are projections of water consumption. So what we have here is, in 2000, water consumption was projected to increase, and then it decreased. And then in 2005, it was projected to increase, and then it decreased. And then in 2010, it was projected to increase. And it kept doing this over and over again. That's pot, cook, right? That is not realizing that we needed to stop because consumption, per capita consumption, decreased by almost half in that time. We were all very conscientious. We did the right thing. We cut back. We xeriscaped our lawns, all that stuff, right? And the city didn't grow and the county didn't grow in population as much as we thought it did. And by the way, if we had built enough housing, this would not be as big of a problem because we'd have more residents and we'd have more to divvy it out among. But the real problem here is that 90%, actually over 90% by my calculations, of the county water authority's budget is fixed costs, meaning it doesn't matter how much water they sell, they've got to cover the cost because it's infrastructure that we've invested in the past, and you could sell a gallon or 100,000 acre feet, it wouldn't matter. And what that means is that we can't conserve our way out of this problem because the less we use, the less they sell, the more they have to charge per gallon. And now they're selling half as much as they used to. And this problem is going to get worse. And that is a thing that's really important to understand. The city of San Diego's Pure Water Project, they aspire to cover half of all the city's water needs. Well, the city is 40% of the county water authority's sales. So they would cut 20% of their sales, which would require them to increase their prices by 25%, just to cover the fact that they're no longer selling as much to the city of San Diego. And it's not just the city of San Diego. There's the East County Advanced Purification Project. There's the Helix Water Reliability Project. There's the Pure Water Oceanside, not to mention the Met's endeavors, right? And so that is a huge effing problem. And it's only going to get worse. We have too much supply, and so we need to learn what to do with that. And again, how we got here in the 90s, we did the right thing, right? We ensured reliable access to water, but we have more than we need now. The cost structure is 90% fixed costs, so the less we consume, the more we have to pay. And then finally, and this is really important, as Nick mentioned, there are assistance programs for every utility but water. There's Obama phones, there's Lifeline, there's assistance with internet, there's everything but water, and that's because Prop 218, which was passed by a bunch of people who ate taxes, said you cannot charge any property-related fee for more or less than your best estimate of what it costs to provide the good or service to the property, okay? The courts have interpreted this in a way that to me is insane and is very aggressive, and have come after the city of San Diego recently, multiple, I think OTAI, that basically have said any rate structure other than you pay exactly what it costs to give you your water is not okay, meaning we can't charge people for using a crap ton of water, right? We can't say, we used to have in the city, you have this amount of money that it costs for your first X gallons and then that amount of money for the next X gallons. You can't do that. The courts have struck it down. So that's a huge, huge problem. Okay. And by the way, I just want to point out, expensive water is annoying to me. It's annoying because I make enough money to be able to afford it. For some of you, it's annoying. For others, it is crushing. And this is really a problem where we need to accept the annoyance among those of us who can afford it, and we need to come up with a solution for those for whom it's crushing. So I would propose 2 tweaks and 2 big ambitious projects. The first tweak is the county water authority shouldn't invest in infrastructure without first gaining commitments from agencies to purchase a minimum amount of water. If they had done this over the last 20 years, say, we're not going to build that desal plant until we get 10-year commitments or even more, that you're going to purchase at least this many gallons, they would have been able to provide stability in prices. They could have said, well, everybody's committed to buying at least this much, so we know our gallon price is going to be that much, and so you can plan around that. And we would have avoided the problem of Rainbow and Fallbrook saying, we're out of here, because they would have been on the hook to buy a certain amount from the water authority. And by the way, we should do the same thing to Met. Met should not be allowed, they should be required to obtain minimum commitments before they invest in any capacity, because they're going to create the exact same problem we have. The second thing is that agencies should seek out non-rate revenues to pay for customer assistance programs. You cannot use rate revenues to pay for customer assistance programs under Prop 218, which is insane. But okay, so there are three agencies that have already done this. San Diego, the city of San Diego has a voluntary donation program that ratepayers can donate toward a customer assistance program. Sweetwater leases cell towers on their land, and they use that to fund a customer assistance program. Imperial Beach has funding from the State Public Utilities Commission to fund a customer assistance program. We've got a lot of different ideas for how to fund those customer assistance programs, some that are sourced from our agency, some that are sourced from other areas like Philadelphia. And if you go to Think, PIC, that's Think Policy and Innovation Center, thinkpic.org/water, we've got 5 detailed reports that get into this, but we've got a whole list of here's the way that you got to do it. And by the way to do this is you have to collaborate with everybody. You've got to plan out how much is this assistance program going to cost, and then figure out how to implement it, fund it, and implement it. Planning out how it costs, we have solved that problem at PIC. We created a tool based on actual water bills that can tell you exactly how much it will cost based on the design of your program. So we can say, in Oceanside, or say, in Poway, if we give assistance to anybody making 200% of the federal poverty line or more, and we cover the full base cost, meaning they only pay the volumetric portion of their bill, and we assume that 70% of people are going to participate, guess what? That would only cost $380,000 a year. That's not a big deal. That's very doable. Right? So plan out, figure out how much it would cost to implement the program that you want, find the funding, and support it. The 2 ambitious solutions, Nick already talked about the County Water Authority pursuing opportunities to sell access to drought-resistant water. It's not actually sending water somewhere else, right? We're not sending water up the pipes to LA. It's paper swaps, and that's kind of a complex economics and finance thing. And I think the focus should be on an insurance policy. It's less about we're going to give you water. It's more when the drought comes, you can rely on our drought-resistant source, and the state will exempt you from cutbacks, as Nick mentioned. So I think that that's amazing. And the Water Authority is doing great work pursuing a legal framework to be able to do this, and it's really hard and it'll take a long time. But that's really important work. And then the second thing is that I believe that the County Water Authority and local agencies should lead, should assemble, and I would love for PIC to help, a coalition of community foundations across the state of California, of agencies and of other water entities to get an initiative on the ballot, to have a carve out from Prop 218 for water so that we can take those water rates down for low-income families. The ideal way you do this in the state of California is that you would use the state's existing unemployment insurance program, which knows exactly how much everybody makes, and say you're automatically going to be signed up for this thing if your household income is lower than a certain cutoff. I think we could do it in a really creative way with partners from the state. So that's my proposed solution.
Thank you. Well, those were great. I think they were educational. That was part of what we tried to engineer with this format, was a way to educate so that we could set up a good discussion. So thank you both. Let's get right at it, though. Nick, I'm going to go with you. This week, the City Council discussed and decided not to go forward yet with a planned multi-year increase to the water rates that total compounded 63% over the next 4 years. Significant rate increase. I was struck by a couple of the comments there, but one of them in particular from Stephen Whitburn, who said, and I think it was a little bit surprising to me as I hadn't seen him sort of take much of a stand on that he simply would not accept that number. And yet that number seems pretty well concocted based on what's due, what the costs are. You're facing some pretty significant resistance. If you had him right here, what would you say to him?
Good to see you, council member.
Hi. Real heads get that.
You know, I think the city council is right to be skeptical about a 4-year rate increase. And why I say that, and I want to acknowledge I have two of my colleagues from the Water Authority here, Director Roback from Otay and Director Freehoff from Santa Fe, and they've heard me say this in the boardroom. I get frustrated when we are trying to make water rate projections for multiple years. And the reason why is that every year that I've had to unhappily vote on a water rate increase at the Water Authority, I'm always told, well, if you vote on this number right now, in years 2 and 3, it's going to be this. And they always try to tell me that it's lower. It's going to be lower. If we go high now, it's going to come in low later. That has never been the case. That has never happened, literally never happened to me in my 4 years of service in the Water Authority. So I think the skepticism to sort of say, or for the council members to say, no, I'm just not going to accept that, is right for two things. One, because we just don't know. We don't know what the year 2, 3, and 4 increase is going to be because the Water Authority hasn't adopted their rates. We adopt rates on an annual basis, so we do it every year. And so then that's what gets factored into agencies like the City of San Diego in terms of what they need to pass through to the customer. Here's the other part. So in years 2 and 3 and 4, we at the Water Authority all have ranges right now as to what we expect it to be. And so in year 2027, the anticipated rate increase is between 8 and 10%. And so again, 8 and 10%. That's going to be for the three of us to debate in the boardroom, right? So for me, I've always been someone that I'm fighting water rate increases. So I've never accepted a staff recommendation at face value. I've always drived it lower. And so best believe if the range right now is 8 and 10%, I'm going to drive it lower in 27 and 28 and 29. So I think there's right to have that skepticism. And so that's where I think you may see, if there is any change or anything like that, there may be a desire from the city council to not adopt a full 4-year. Which is within their prerogative. And again, it does factor into sort of my experience of having been in water, which is just the environment is so unpredictable at this point, and we have also the massive opportunity with the metropolitan settlement, and if we can get something done. So it's just really hard to predict, but I understand, why that's been brought forward as a staff recommendation. But again, I understand the skepticism as well.
So my news ears go up. They were planning or being asked by your boss to consider 4 years of rate increases each year. You're saying, though, here that when this comes back, don't be surprised if some of the years aren't on there?
No, I'm saying it's going to have to come back that way because that's how we've noticed it under Prop 218. So it is going to come back that way. What the city council could do is they could say that they're not going to approve for years 3 and 4. They're only going to do 1 and 2 or potentially 3, right? They can do lower than what the staff recommendation is. They can't do higher. So, and the reason why we propose a 4-year rate increase is for the Public Utilities Department to be able to plan for some of its capital projects that it needs to do in outward years. When you have, sort of like you have to keep going back to seek approval authority, it just gets difficult for our staff to be able to plan the investments that they need to long term. So we're trying to give them a runway so that they can have some certainty to be able to do the work. But then at the same time, we are living in a very high cost of living environment, so that is an understandable option at this point.
Fascinating. One of the things that came up in this debate, and I'll try to give some background, and I want you both to answer because you both brought it up, is this question of pure water. So just dialing back, 15, several years ago, the city was faced with a movement and a legal challenge to upgrade the sewage treatment plant in Point Loma. All our sewage goes there. It's treated only at a primary standard. That's against the law. They made a settlement, long-term settlement, that they wouldn't upgrade the plant, but instead they would divert the wastewater to instead be treated to potable standards and put back into the system. That is the deal in place. For many years, they spent just fighting the ick factor, and then got past that, and now it is literally under construction as pure water. This is pure water phase 1. However, right before your city council discussion about the water rates, one of your board members, Jim Medaffer, a former city council member, said that he believes that the city should back off phase 2, which phase 2 would get you to that 50% of water demand from the regional authority being reduced. It's sorry, very complicated. But the point is, if they build pure water to its full capacity, they're going to use at about half what they need from the water authority every year, which means that cost dynamic that you described about the cost still being in place while fewer customers are buying fewer supplies is going to be significant. Anyway, he's saying maybe don't build that full project. He's your board member, former city council member. Do you have a response to him?
Just that we are reevaluating. I want to be cautious in my word choice. We are looking at phase 2 because it's what I said in my presentation. Look, when we dreamed of pure water and we planned it out, as Scott indicated 15 years ago or however long, the world was what it was at that time. And I think one of the most responsible things that government can do in general is ask the question about whether it makes sense today. Now, I think what is going to end up happening is that what was envisioned for the full phase 2 of pure water 15 years ago may be, rescoped or rescaled to meet the demands of today. And that's the work that we're doing right now at the City of San Diego. Pure water phase 1 is going to happen. By the way, P.S., if you live in the North City area, that's why your roads are so bad. Sorry. So pure phase 1 is going to happen, and we're currently doing the work to see what level or scale of phase 2 we need to do, because I think that is not only just a responsible thing from just pure water demands in general, but then also from what's cost effective in today's world.
Do you see all the news just raining down on this group of people here? Very exciting moment for you all. If you can tell. Daniel, you mentioned something similar. Do you think the city should back off?
Yeah, the way I think about this is my kid's in daycare, right? And when he gets sick, it's a pain in the ass because I have work and my partner works too, and so what are we going to do? And there's a temptation to take him into daycare. But if he's sick and we take him into daycare, he's going to get the other kids sick. So thank God my daycare has very stringent standards. I want them to hold me to a stringent standard because 19 times, or whatever, however many kids there's 15 of the kids or something, 14 out of the 15 times, it's another kid who's going to get my kid and then me sick. And one of those times, it's me. And I don't want a free ride, just what I'd rather we all be held to a high standard. And in the same way, if the agencies will allow themselves to say, okay, we'll make commitments, long-term commitments to purchase a certain amount so that the water authority can give us more stable estimates, so that we know they would be, and if they can cooperate on, okay, I am investing in this amount of capacity, you're investing in that capacity, would we rather not? Is there some payment that can be made to either encourage or discourage the investments that we don't do or don't want to make? Yes, it would constrain each individual agency, but there's 18 of them. So 17 out of the 18 times that benefit from that constraint, because having other people commit to a certain amount would allow them to have stability. And yeah, if their water demand goes down, they've committed to pay for a certain amount. Now they're paying for more than they bought. That's a bummer. But the other 17 are providing reliable support, right? So to me, that is an economic logic that makes sense.
Stay on this sort of city topic for a second. Council member Kent Lee was the first to comment saying, whoa, I think we should hold off on this. I actually think we have lost the trust of the public at this point. We've done all these fee increases recently, trash fee, parking fees, and he pointed at your boss and your staff in particular that the way you've communicated about the need and the rates and all these fees has been, I guess, poor, and you've eroded the public's trust. Do you think the public understands what's happening, and do you feel like your team is at fault for how you've communicated if they don't?
I think specifically when it comes to water, I think people understand, what the water rate increases are, they happen, with some frequency. So I think they understand that, a broader, inflationary challenge. I think, what's baked into the increases is stuff that we constantly are trying to communicate on. And there are a lot of factors that go into it. I mean, I think a lot of people don't think about the fact that, Metropolitan Water District that I mentioned, who a lot of people on their average day don't think about, they're passing down rate increases that the Water Authority has to bake in to our rate increases as well. So that's one example. I think, Scott, this is sort of in government an existential question at this point about communication. It's changed. The traditional media methods aren't necessarily how people are getting their information today. And
I have to apologize to me. We're new media.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm basically 25.
But I think that I think that is going to be a challenge for all government agencies, and I think that's what we're experiencing. It's this question of how are people getting their information today, and it's not generally through TV stations or newspapers. So that means your press releases and whatever else. That's not necessarily meeting people where they are, and so I think government has to start holistically, and this is all levels of government, is that we have to start figuring out the ways of how can we get this information to people so that they understand what is coming to them. Frankly, like with water rate increases, there's 218 notices that go out in the mail, and that was why, that was baked in there, is because in the 218, because they wanted people to know that this was happening and your ability to protest it and where the hearing was going to be. So there was that baked into it, but is that meeting the moment today? That's the question that I think all of us in government have to ask ourselves, and how we can, sort of all do better to make sure that we are communicating where people are so that they know what's happening in their cities and beyond.
Do you have any thoughts on this communication challenge?
I'm an economist and not a politico, so I know nothing. But I find the most curious thing is that in the same election where the city of San Diego voted against a sales tax increase, the city of El Cajon voted for one. You don't think of El Cajon as a more liberal tax accepting place than San Diego. I don't know why that is. I know that even the sales tax to me was like, I'm a big believer in progressive tax policy, and I don't mean that in a political progressive way, but I mean literally progressive taxation. In Pennsylvania, cities can implement income taxes, which is a much more progressive way of doing things than sales taxes, right? So like for me, the sales tax didn't go far enough, but I voted for it with glee, and I was surprised that people didn't. And I think the city has been really had their hands tied by not having enough flexible funding from years of people not voting for taxes. And so my heart goes out to anybody in the city trying to make something happen. I mean, we miss out on grant opportunities because we can't provide matching funds because we don't have enough flexible money. I mean, it's just insane. And I don't know what the solution to that, but you know, the city does not have a sufficient budget. One of the solutions to that, if you attended the housing event, is subdivide plots and build more housing, because that's where the city gets their money from. But you know, all problems lead back to housing. So
I want to pick up on something you said in your talk, Nick, which was so the city of San Diego is one of the departments that's part of the County Water Authority. County Water Authority is one of the agencies that's part of the Metropolitan Water District. The Metropolitan Water District has the same dynamic you described that we're dealing with, which is that they have big infrastructure investments on their list of things they want to do, a giant tunnel they want to build, but among them is their own LA, Orange County area pure water projects, right? And these are big. These are really big wastewater recycling projects. And I think what you said is they need to hold off on doing that. Is that fair?
Yeah.
So just straight up, like as a group, when you are represented on the Metropolitan Water Board, you want them to hold off on that.
Well, so I don't serve on MET, but what I think they
your reps.
Yes.
Do, yeah.
And what I mean by that is, you know, there has been so many local supply projects that have been detailed in this conversation that have come up over the last, you know, couple of decades, right? And I think the work hasn't been done to evaluate how you can maximize those projects to be able to do that, to produce the water that it can at max capacity, and then be able to move it to the jurisdictions in the Met service area that need it. That analysis hasn't happened. So if we're not doing that and seeing, you know, if San Diego is saying we have more water than we need, and you know, that Met hasn't asked us, okay, well, we have these demands that we are not going to be able to meet. You know, how can you help? That conversation didn't happen. So what we're doing is we're just planning new supply projects for the sake of planning new supply projects, but not actually demonstrating the necessity of them, because you haven't analyzed, you know, what is the actual capacity that all of these projects, inclusive of Pure Water San Diego, you know, if there's more that you can produce that is going to be more than you need, and you can move that to us, and we can pay you for it, I think that is a worthwhile conversation, a worthwhile analysis that should happen before you ask the ratepayer to do $11 billion in Pure Water SoCal.
And one of the things I think Dan said that was really good was before you do something like that, you have a commitment to purchase it. Yeah. Do you have any follow-up thoughts to what he was just saying?
yeah, I mean, I just think every member of the Met should be voting to say you cannot make capacity investments before you get minimum commitments from all of my peers, right? It's like, okay, I don't like this for me, but again, it's like sending your sick kid to the daycare. Like, it's better to have your hands tied if everybody else gets their hands tied too.
I never just pumped them full of Tylenol and sent them. I swear. I always kept them home responsibly, of course. Okay, so I wanted to ask that question to set the foundation for this one, which is going to be a challenge for me to articulate. But I think part of the dynamic that you guys are dealing with right now is that you have an excess of future supply of water, And so you're contemplating selling it not only to Metropolitan Water District, but perhaps, if there can be agreements made in federal law and all that, perhaps selling some of those, or however you do it, pushing along the supplies to Arizona or Nevada or other places. The concept is that the Colorado River, with climate change, is nowhere near going to provide what it has historically provided in water, and that's going to force a reckoning among all the states, both the upper basin and the lower basin, about how we share the Colorado River water. And I think the understanding is right now that Arizona has the lowest priority, right? So if this Arizona is going to have a long-term interest in supplies being reliable, and that they might have such an interest that they could send Arizona cash to fund pure water projects or other things on the California coast, that if we save our wastewater, if we desalinate, we could maybe use some of that investment. I think it's even fair to say that Metropolitan Water District is counting on that, or is thinking.
Yeah, but you have so much less leverage after you've built the project,
Right,
to say, please buy our water, than before you buy the project to say, we're not going to do this.
So that's
unless you come big.
So that's my question to you both then. How does this come together? Because I think there is an imbalance. Even though we have more supply than we need, I don't think we all have the supply throughout the southern United States, southwestern United States, that we need. And so it's kind of bananas that we would cut back on what we could do when there's a lot more need, but figuring that all out is going to be really hard. So how does that play out? Do you have the brains that are big enough to figure that out?
I think we do, and I think these are the conversations that we have to be having in real time, right? I think, what I don't want to see Metropolitan do is have a knee-jerk reaction to the situation that they had 3 years ago and just start building all of this stuff, but without any idea of where it's going to go or whether it's sustainable. It's sustainable not only just, usually just from a cost perspective, but also from a water demand perspective, which I guess they're one and the same. But yeah, I think those are all the conversations that we need to be having. If Arizona wants to buy into a pure water project or a desal plan or whatever, I mean, those are all, we need to be at the table having those discussions. And so I do think that we actually have the right leadership in place at Metropolitan and San Diego County Water Authority, where we're willing to think in this new way. And Scott, I just want to point out, this was my whole notion about stop doing things the way that they've always been done, because I think for so long water just operated in silos and we fought each other and this was all mine, and it didn't get us really anywhere except to where we are right now. And so we're willing to ask these more provocative and innovative questions, like selling water to places that need it, because I think that just speaks to the unprecedented times we're in and the big picture thinking that we need to be doing in this moment.
Yeah, I think the Met is about to say cook, and then go on vacation. I mean, I just think that's stupid. Like, they've seen what it did to us in terms of the cost. We have the least affordable water in America. When you compare the water rates to our income, and it's not Nick's fault, it's not anybody who's currently there's fault, but like, we have the least affordable water in America. And Met wants to replicate our stunning success? I mean, come on. Like, think about this. Now, the one thing I do worry about is I don't understand the politics of Department of Interior and all that, but like, if our current president, who loves to do anything that hurts California, decides to just come along and say, well, now the Department of Interior is going to declare Arizona to be able to have all the water they want and California's effed. I mean, that is a real concern. So I don't know how strong we can play our hand because I don't know the politics of it, but like, to just start with investing in capacity without a frickin' plan is stupid.
I think that's such a interesting and scary and weird point. The law of the river, as it's called, is the rule of law, right? It's not about law and order. It's about, if there's a dispute, they'll look at the law and their court will decide whether it's true, right? And the law of the river that decides who has access and rights to the river is so weird. It is so weird. It's like a napkin signed in 1890.
And it comes from it's inherited from England where they have plenty of water and like it's totally insane. And it's like not even fully written down anywhere.
Right.
And it's completely, utterly insane.
And so we base this entire world off of that. And it's just like when you dig into it, it literally is, it's like a napkin shoved into a Bible in 1850 or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, if Trump did decide to say, well, that's stupid, like this is the way the law is now, that could be a really, really big thing. And we might be excited. Do you think it could get to the point where you sell, we might be excited that we have so much water, but that you sell too much that you actually like overdo it, and then we're suddenly back where we have over leveraged ourselves?
Sure, that is 1,000% part of the conversation and a part of the balance, right? I think in my mind, we would seek to do some in the initial some short-term ventures that would allow us to, be able to sell and move some supplies. I think A, as a proof of concept, but then also, B, I think it's because we don't want to overcommit ourselves to, sell water to these places. And then if we do end up in a very extreme drought, if Trump comes in and says, California gets no water, any of those situations is stuff that we are guarding for in real time. So that is all part of the ongoing conversations right now and the thought process.
All right, let's turn to some of your questions. They're very good, and I think provide some context level. One says, literally, can you set the context? Do you happen to know offhand the % of industrial, residential, and agricultural use for San Diego County water?
Not often.
Yeah.
If I had
But
my colleague Fernando with me, I could answer that question.
That's fair, but you made a point earlier I thought was provocative, which I think was that if you had been in charge when things went crazy 30 years ago, you would have said, farmers, sorry.
I would have said, I double dog dare you, Governor, to shut down the third largest economy in California, to save a 2% of
But
GDP.
the dare is that he would then choose to cut off the farmers instead.
I mean, it's not San Diego farm, right? Like this is the Central Valley uses 80% of our water supply. 4 out of 5 gallons go to growing rice where we shouldn't be, and avocados and other things that we should not be growing in an arid region. Like, it's just absurd. So, I mean, if you're playing hardball, you'd say, I dare you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the banks would do, right? That's what they did in the financial collapses. Sure, shut us down. We dare you,
Okay, let's talk about, there's a few questions that came in about alternatives. I think that...
I'll say agriculture use very low in San Diego County. And they pay a little bit lower rates. And for that, they get less security.
Yeah.
So their water gets shut off first. That's what they get in exchange for paying low rates.
Yeah. Not low enough for Rainbow and Fallbrook, though. Okay. I remember. Very exciting moment in Politifest history. Let's talk about this thing that hovers. So the frustration on the city council about the water rates erupted into this question, first by Marnie von Wilpert, then by Shawnilo Rivera, that, hey, maybe we should get out of the water authority. Shawnilo Rivera said it in different terms, like everything should be on the table. I think there's been LAFCO, as our Mackenzie Elmer has reported. She already had 2 panels, so she had to give me one. So, but they're studying options that would include, merging the water authority into Met, dissolving, or breaking it up into 3, somehow changing it. I think at the heart of the concern is, could we get out by restructuring the water authority or dissolving it? Could we get out of some of those investments we made? The purchase of desalination or the purchase of Imperial Valley water? And what's your core response to that?
That I don't think it's a benefit to any of the ratepayers in San Diego County to do something like that. And here's why. It's the collective investments that we've made. And I want to put, another sort of contextual point that I know is cold comfort for ratepayers, but it is, I think, true, and I often try to say that it's worth saying. across Southern California and the West along the Colorado River, San Diego is really in a unique position to actually say that we have water that we can sell to other places, right? No one else is saying that, right? And that's because of the collective decisions that we made 2 decades ago that people are trying to make now. Now, when it comes to metropolitan, my biggest thing on why I think it's a bad interest, it's not in the best interest of San Diegans for that to happen, is that if we were to somehow dissolve or blow up the water authority and we were just to go away and just hitch our wagon to metropolitan, we shrink our voting power at metropolitan. Right now, the only agency that has more vote share at metropolitan than San Diego County is the city of LA. We're number 2. And then right after us is Orange County. So if the thought is that we go to metropolitan as an agency that represents 19 million people and we take our 3.3 million and we divide it, the city of San Diego joins as a member agency at 1.4 million. Well, that's the city of San Diego's 1.4 going against 18 million. That means that our vote power is gone. So the interests of Los Angeles, Orange County, that will prevail. And you just heard me say what they are contemplating in terms of new infrastructure projects. We achieved a landmark settlement agreement that largely insulates San Diego County from those increased costs for the next 10 years. But if San Diego County Water Authority doesn't exist, then the question is, are we suggesting that we should be on the hook for all of those infrastructure investments, even though we've already done the work down here? So all the way around, I think it's just a terrible idea, and I think it's more important for us to look at these innovative solutions that are actually solutions and that are in the best interests of all of our ratepayers here in the region.
There's an irony here too, of course, which is that the city of San Diego is the one who pushed to make all these investments, right? I mean, what you hear from other agencies is they'll say the County Water Authority is the city of San Diego. I mean, here's Nick as the best and brightest from Todd Gloria's team, and I mean, it's ironic that the city would be like, stop bossing us around.
No,
it's like,
true.
It's you.
And this is precisely why I tell reporters that we can never say the city of San Diego says this or the county of San Diego says this, because they often are different people within that saying a lot of different things. You got to, as close as you can, identify the people.
Yeah. And I think, it's just, as a general principle, defaulting on your debts is not a great long-term strategy.
Well, I wanted to, how many of you are students here? We have a few, right? Okay. You can hold it up. It's all right. Yeah. How great is it there's so many students here today, by the way, right? Across Politifest, I think we had more than 200 students sign up. Some just to be here, some to volunteer, and I'm really proud of that. And one group that you'll see all around are the Aaron Price Fellows. Every year, 9th graders apply to be part of the Aaron Price Fellows, and they pick a diverse group of 40 out of 300. There are thousands now of Aaron Price Fellow alumni, including Mayor Todd Gloria was one of the first classes, I think. It is an extraordinary program that combines students from all across the various schools and from so many different backgrounds. I'm pleased to support them every year. I speak at their different engagements, and they're just such a bright and exciting group. I wish I had a program that took me around the city to show me how the city works, that took me to DC to show me how that works. I had to become a journalist to get that opportunity. But we have an Aaron Price Fellow. Adrian, come up and ask your question.
Hello, I'm Adrian, and my question is, how do you envision the landscape of San Diego's water management in 50 years if the correct solutions are not implemented?
Now, key twist at the end, are not implemented. Like, get us dystopian here. Let's go.
Mad Max.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you guys remember that? There was
Dune.
There was like an ABC like Monday night special where they projected what would happen in 100 years, and at the first chapter was that it was in San Diego, a family in San Diego, but San Diego had built a bunch of desalination plants, And there was a big
Well, yeah, and Ezra Klein's hugely popular new book, Abundance, which a lot of you have probably read, envisions this utopic future, and he keeps talking about desal plants. And he's like, this 2 or 3 times where he talks about we're going to get water out of the ocean. And it's like, Australia built 12 desal plants, and 11 of them are mothballed because they don't make economic sense. Now, our desal plant, if we're able to sell water at the right price, could work for us. But the biggest contributor to the cost of desalination is electricity. I don't know if any of you have paid your electricity bill recently, but that's not cheap, right? So,
All right, well, go further, though. You're the economist. It's 50 years. We make the wrong decisions. What does it look like?
There's nobody here. I mean, if we really make the worst possible decisions, is not,
Do you think we could make such bad decisions at this point where it's no longer viable to have a large economy here?
If here's the, a friend of mine shared this concern with me, and it's been rattling in my brain ever since. The concern is that San Diego becomes Santa Barbara, a place where it's nice to live for rich people, and no normal human being can afford to live. And Oprah is here and whatever, but Mitt Romney lives here. It's a great place to live, but hopefully more than just Mitt Romney can afford to live here. And I think if we continue to not make the proactive investments in maintenance, that then we have to pay 25 times as much to fix when it becomes an emergency. If we keep making these decisions and we don't build enough housing, it's just going to be a place for the ultra rich and the ultra lucky.
Ditto. I mean, if we don't make those right decisions, it's going to be what the mayor has often said, is that we could become a city where it's for the ultra rich who can afford to live here, and then the ultra poor who are just trapped here. And I don't think that is the city that we want. So, Adrian, I'm going to try and make some great decisions so that that's not a world that we live in.
Yeah. We had a question here. So McKinsey did a story 2 weeks ago or so, or a week ago, about having the county water authority had to purchase water from the desalination plant that it didn't actually produce because of the contract. Is there any way to renegotiate that contract in particular?
I'm sure we could go to the table to have discussions if we wanted to renegotiate it with the private party. Sure, yes, but I think my main focus is really about trying to sell off that water to jurisdictions that need it. I do think that there is value to the desal plant, but the fact is that it being on our books, paying what we're paying, but we're actually not using it. That's the part to me that's not ever sitting right with me. So therefore, the supply and demand comes into play. There's people who need it, and so I'm interested in marketing it to the best of our ability within at least at this point, the confines of the agreement that's there.
Yeah, and I think the economics of it is not that it's that the marginal gallon of water is worth what it costs us to produce at the desal plant. So if you were just saying, we'll sell you water and you'll have a little extra water in a world where there was never going to be cutbacks, nobody would buy that water because it's too expensive. But in a world where we say, you buy this water and you will also get this designation from the state that you have a drought-resistant supply of water, and the next time there's droughts you don't have cutbacks, then buying a little bit of extra, basically buying into an insurance policy, makes a lot of sense.
We did it.
Oh.
We fixed everything. No, I think we could keep going, but I wanted to give you a few more minutes to get ready, and I might want to get ready for the next panel, which is our live podcast where we're going to celebrate and talk about the winning presentations from today. And that'll be in the main theater. If you haven't had a chance to vote, this was probably the least showdowny of showdowns. But I intended this to be as educational and interesting as possible, and so that's there. But I do want you to please weigh in on which one you thought made the best presentation. That would be great. And let's thank Dan and Nick. And I will see you in the main theater at 4:15. Thank you.